everyone, Andrew here, and for this week's display video, since it is Sonic the Hedgehog week, I thought I would go over a whole bunch of the different consoles that Sega came out with back when they were in the console market. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of interesting things that they came out with back when they were competing with Nintendo and stuff like that. So yeah, the one thing to note is that I grew up with Nintendo as a kid. So usually you were either a Nintendo kid, a Sega kid, or you had neither, although there were the lucky few who had both. But yeah, so I grew up with Nintendo, so there's quite a few things I never really got to see about Sega until I started collecting, and I actually started getting my first few Sega consoles. So yeah, that's why I'm not really going to spend the video on each console like I did for Nintendo. Like I could spend the whole video talking about the Super Nintendo and it'd be like half an hour long. We're just going to do a quick glance over a whole bunch of the stuff that Sega came out with, and we're going to be pointing out some of the Sonic games that came out on each console along the way. And yeah, hopefully it works out well. Just one thing to note is that, as I said, Sega isn't something I really got into until I started collecting. So while I know quite a bit about most of this stuff, there is always the slight chance I will make a mistake on something, just say like a wrong date or something like that. So please correct me down in the comments, because if I say something wrong, I definitely want to know what it actually is supposed to be. So yeah, just feel free to yell at me if I do make a mistake. But yeah, without further ado, let's go back to one of the very first things that Sega made. And I say one of the very first, but I actually don't have the very first console that Sega came out with, known as the SG-1000, and there's a whole bunch of different variations of it, and I believe that only came out in Japan and Australia, and it was like their first kind of console that got them into the market. At that swap meet I went to a few weekends ago, there was actually a clone system of it, and it came with the game and everything, and it was really neat, although the person wanted like $70 for it. I wasn't going to pay that, so I was going to kind of wait it out till the end of the show, although unfortunately it was sold before the end. I don't know if they actually paid $70 or if they ended up giving them a deal partway through the show. So anyway, I didn't end up getting it. And that would have been neat to have that. It was something I've always wanted to give a try, but unfortunately I didn't get to pick that up. I mean, $70 was just a bit too much to spend. But the first thing I'm going to be talking about here, since the SG-1000 did not come out here, is the Sega Master System. And it had a whole bunch of different box sets, just like the NES. It had like the action set, it had the deluxe set, the sports set. Sega Master System had its fair share of things too. Like this one right here is just your normal Master System set. And usually Master System sets that came with the light gun, 2 controllers, the actual deck, and usually a game. I mean, I'm sure that there's sets that don't come with the game, although I think that most of them that I see did. Sometimes it will actually be in a game, like in a case, and then like a cartridge you can put in your console. Although Sega did something neat, and for some of the Master Systems, there was actually a game built in. So here we have the Master System here. So like if you didn't put a game in it and you turn it on, some Master Systems actually have a game that will start up when you do that. So that's actually really neat. One thing that I've always hated about the Master System though, since, I mean, I grew up with Nintendo, so it's just something I was always accustomed to, is that if we have a look at the controllers, one of which is right here, you have your 1 and 2 buttons over here, kind of like your A and B buttons on an NES controller, and your D-pad. But what do you notice is missing? Something in the middle. There's no start or select buttons. Well, the select button's not really important. I mean, Sega never really had select buttons on their controllers, but the start button. So, I mean, how do you pause your game? Well, I mean, you have to walk up to the console and press the pause button, which is right here, and I always hated that. That's one pet peeve I've always had with the Master System. I mean, back then, I mean, pausing was like a luxury. I mean, you had the Atari 2600, and it didn't pause at all. So, I mean, I guess having to walk up to the console didn't seem like that big of a deal if you got the Master System. I mean, at least it paused at all, right? I mean, just growing up with Nintendo consoles, I always hated how the Master System had the pause button built into the actual console. Because a lot of times when you see pictures of like really old gaming, you'll see like a person sitting at a table with a TV kind of like on the other side of the table. So I mean, it's always like the console was kind of right in front of you, so it wasn't too hard to press the pause button. And I guess that was kind of the excuse. Well, controllers a lot of times didn't have very long cords back then. I mean, it's still a pain. But yeah, that's just one pet peeve I've always had with it. One neat thing about the Sega Master System was the card slot. And there was games, if you've ever seen the TurboGrafx game, I didn't grab any of the card games, and there's no way I'm getting out of here. Because yeah, one thing I didn't mention is that I am just completely surrounded in stuff, and there are still things I would have liked to have shown. But there's absolutely no more room around me for me to put these things. So yeah, unfortunately I'm not going to be able to show absolutely everything. One of the things I'm not going to be able to show is my Mega Drive European box, because it's just huge and there's nowhere I could put it. But yeah, so I forgot to grab a card, but there's no way I'm getting that now. But yeah, So it's kind of like TurboGrafx, how it's used to these really small, thin cards, and you can put them in, and there's whole games on it. Also, if you have the 3D glasses, one of the really neat things that the Master System had is people think, oh wow, 3D is this brand new thing. They no, it's been around for a long time. Obviously, the technology is advanced, but I mean, it was there in the past, just not as good. Yeah, so the 3D glasses plug into there so that it doesn't take up a controller slot. But yeah. So that is the Master System, a whole bunch of interesting games for that. As far as Sonic games for the Master System go, they're usually just ports of Game Gear games, because as someone pointed out in the comments of my Sonic the Hedgehog 1 Master System / Game Gear random game of the day, someone pointed out that the Master System actually had a really long life, because it was like really popular in Europe. So that's why even like after the Genesis and everything came out and the Game Gear came out, they were able to port Game Gear games back to the Master System, since they were both kind of 8-bit and both had the same kind of graphics stuff. So they were able to do that, and that was something I never knew. So thank you very much for pointing that out. And here is another console I have, and this box is very plain. I actually do not know the story behind this box. Part of me wants to say that this was a box that might have been sent out to stores to be like a display unit that you would like set up so people could try it out. But then near the bottom, in that middle square, it says like proof of purchase. Set as the other one I showed earlier. Although it might not actually have a like in it. No, it didn't say that on the front. I don't think. One other set I have is the 3D glasses set, so it comes with everything that the normal one came with, although it also comes with the 3D glasses and the 3D game, which is pretty neat. But yeah, I think that's all we're going to say about the Master System, because it's already almost like 10 minutes in, and we're only touched on the first console, and we have quite a lot to go, especially the Genesis, because Genesis has way too many revisions. And the first one that we are going to talk about is ye usual Model 1 Sega Genesis Core System, and this is the very first model of the Sega Genesis. I actually had no friends who had this as a kid. All my friends had the second model. And it wasn't until I started collecting that I actually really found out about the Sega Genesis Model 2. And the Sega Genesis is an interesting console. It was obviously where Sonic the Hedgehog was first introduced, and he had some of his best games. Like obviously Sonic 1 to 3, Sonic and Knuckles, and a whole bunch of other crazy things too. You had like Sonic, Sonic Spinball, and Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, oh man. But yeah, so here we have the actual console, and with the Sega CD front loader on the bottom, which actually isn't too easy to come by. The Sega CD is something we'll talk about in just a minute. Yeah, one thing I didn't show here is your typical Master System game case, and your typical Master System game. Very plain, just rectangle cartridge with a red label across the top. No picture or anything like that back then. Although then for Genesis, usually had a kind of gray case with a grid on it. Although eventually Genesis cases became more red, and you have your typical Genesis cartridge with the name on top, which is awesome, and actually a nice picture on the front and not just plain text, which is much better, I think. So yeah, here is the bundle that the majority of the people I knew as a kid had. If they didn't have a Nintendo console and they didn't have absolutely nothing, then they usually had this. I must have known at least 4 or 5 since I was a Nintendo guy. I would always go over to my friends' houses and play Sonic 2, because it was an awesome game. Sonic 2's multiplayer was also great. Kind of like the competition style, so you could win the best of like the 4 kind of things. You had the Emerald Hill Zone, the cave. Darn it, I can't believe I'm forgetting the cave. Mystery Cave. No, that's gonna be bugging me now. And Casino Night. Man, how am I forgetting the name of that? Ah, it's bugging me. Anyway, so yeah, a lot of my friends had that. And the Genesis controller. This was the one that my friends always had, but it actually had. And this Genesis controller is actually broken. I just grabbed it because it was convenient to, use on in the video. It actually had a start button, so we could actually pause our games partway through, which was awesome. So yeah, there was that Genesis controller, and there was also this one, which I actually like much more, much smaller, not as bulky. I mean, it doesn't need to be super big when all it has is 3 buttons on it. Start buttons right there, which is great, and the buttons are a lot nicer, and I also like the control pad a lot more. It's very nice. And yeah, but Sega didn't stop there. So I mean, it's normal for a console to maybe have kind of one like actual design revision. I mean, even consoles today do it. You have Slim PlayStation 3, Slim 360, even like the Slim NES back then. Oh yeah, and one thing I never did touch on, which I actually can't believe I actually forgot about, because it's kind of hiding in front of me. So yeah, we talked about the Genesis 2, although I'm going to jump back for a minute and talk about the Master System 2. And this was obviously very close to the end of the Master System's life. And this one has Alex Kidd and Miracle World built in. So yeah, like I was saying, Genesis could have built-in consoles. And it's quite interesting, although of course it still has the pause button built into it, so it's still quite annoying. Although one thing you'll notice is that it doesn't have the card slot, so if you had cards, you were completely toast. But yeah, if you wanted to play Alex Kidd and Miracle World, all you did was plug that in, don't put a game in it, turn it on, and yeah, you'll be playing it. Because that is one thing I thought was really neat about Sega's older consoles, was the built-in game feature, something that Nintendo I don't think ever really did. But yeah, anyway, I was talking about the Sega Genesis 1 and 2, and yeah, they didn't stop at just 2 revisions, they just kept going and going. And eventually, there was a Sega Genesis 3, and I showed this box not too long ago, because I just found the special controller that was supposed to go with it, which I didn't actually have. And I mean, you thought the Sega Genesis, like, 1 is pretty rectangle, 2 is kind of square, and 3 is just ridiculously small. I mean, it's like smaller than my hand if I stretch out my fingers. It's quite crazy. But overall, yeah, the only thing about this one is that you can't use anything with it. You can't use the Sega CD with it. I actually don't know if you can use a 32X with it or not. Something to try out, I guess. I'm actually not quite sure. But yeah, speaking of the Sega CD, something that I didn't touch on before moving on to the Sega Genesis 3, although I guess it doesn't really matter which order I did it in. The Sega CD, one of the add-ons for the Sega Genesis. And, I mean, this is the point when things kind of, I don't know, I would say that things kind of started to go downhill. Sega just started pumping out all these add-ons for their consoles instead of just concentrating on making one new good thing. I don't really know exactly what it was like, though, as a kid, to have, be bombarded by these add-ons. Because like I said, I was a Nintendo guy, so it's like, yeah, one console and no crazy add-ons coming out like years later. I mean, there's like things like the expansion pack for the 64, but I mean, that came bundled with Donkey Kong 64 anyway. So I mean, it's not like you have to go out and buy that separately to play different games. But I mean, yeah, the Sega CD, this is the side one, and I mean, it just got to be a mess, especially when you got to the 32X, which I'll get to in a minute. But I mean, you just have like that add-on. So I mean, when you had the add-on, you had to have another power cord, and even for the 32X, you had to have another power cord and extra AV cables all over the place too. But yeah, the Sega CD, it does have a few decent games. Obviously, like Sonic CD and Sylphy, one of my favorite shooters. Very fun games. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of interesting, and it played CDs and stuff like that, which I guess might have been cool back in the day, since I guess every kid might not have had a CD player. But still, I mean, it's kind of weird how Sega released all these add-ons. And then they even released the 32X not too long after that. Actually, I'm not quite sure exactly how long after it was, but I don't think it was too long after. And you could even combine the CD and the 32X and play these 32 CD game, or CDX, or I don't even know. Oh! I guess I completely forgot. Look at that down there. Okay, it's not going to focus, but that red thing says compatible with all Genesis systems except the CDX. So the 32X does work on this, and we will get to the CDX in just a minute. But yeah, the 32X, another add-on, and I actually have a ton of trouble getting mine to work. I have like 3 of them, including the one in this box, and I mean, they suck getting them to work. It takes like 15 minutes for some reason. I don't know why they're such a pain. But yeah, I mean, overall, the 32X, it did have Knuckles Chaotix as far as Sonic games go. Although, I mean, there was Doom, but I mean, there's other better versions of it too. So overall, the 32X, unless you want to play Knuckles Chaotix, I mean, it's not really the best thing. And there's not really too much point getting it. Unless you're a collector like me, and you just want it in your collection. But yeah, the 32X is apparently compatible with everything but the Sega CDX. Now, this is a combination between the Sega CD and a Sega Genesis kind of molded together. So it plays your normal cartridge games in the top, and it also plays your CD games. Now, the interesting thing about it, though, is it's called the CDX, but I remember I didn't really know too much about it before I got one. So, you know, CDX, I figured it was a Genesis, Genesis, a Sega CD, and a 32X combined together. That's where the X comes from, but it's not. It doesn't play 32X games. It's so dumb. I don't know why they wouldn't make it play 32X games, or why they would put an X in the title if it didn't. Sega actually had a plan on releasing another console. See, this is why they exploded, because they had all these crazy plans and then just focus on the next awesome console like Nintendo did. I mean, they had failures like the Virtual Boy. I mean, it's like one thing that didn't sell well, other than like 400, no. But I mean, they were even planning on creating the Neptune, which was going to be a mix of a Genesis and the 32X, until they finally just said, forget it, and pushed that off to the side and worked on the Saturn, which unfortunately didn't do super well. It only sold like 2 million units in North America. But anyway, we'll get to the Saturn in just a second, because yeah, the CDX is an interesting thing. But yeah, I don't get why it doesn't play 32X games. It's really dumb. And as far as 32X games go, they usually came in yellow boxes. Yeah, Genesis games too also later started coming out in boxes. One thing I really like about Genesis games and Master System games is the fact that they come in nice plastic cases. So I mean, it looks really nice lined up on a shelf, and if you have passwords and stuff like that, you could like keep them in your case and not lose them. I know I've come across Genesis games a whole bunch of times where I open them up and you find like 15-year-old password sheets in there, and it's just really cool to see how much effort someone put into playing this game that you're holding now, and that if you buy it, you're gonna have like all these passwords and stuff. And it's really neat. And I mean, I have so many passwords from the like cheat codes for like Game Genie that like everyone saw me mess up Mario Brothers 3 maybe. But I mean, just so many things like that get lost all over the place because I don't have them nicely organized. And it would be great to have a case like that, just kind of put them with it. Although I probably could figure something out if I really wanted to. But yeah, alright, moving on. Before we get to the Saturn though, let me make sure I'm not missing anything. I don't believe I am. Let's talk about the Sega Game Gear. Sega's, I was about to say only handheld system. Well, that's not true. Although Sega's only handheld system that plays games that you couldn't play on any other console. The Game Gear, very, very interesting. And one of the first color handhelds out there. It was beat by the Lynx, the Atari Lynx, and the Turbo Express. Although it is still an interesting thing. The problem is it takes like 6 batteries. There's 3 there and 3 on the other side, and it just eats them in like a matter of hours. The Virtual Boy was the same. I keep looking over at it, which is why I keep bringing it up. But it ate 6 batteries in like no time at all. But yeah, overall, the Game Gear was interesting, and it definitely did have a ton of support. And it did have some very interesting games too. Like I listed most of the Sonic ones off in my Sonic 1 Master System / Game Gear video, where I talked about Sonic 1, 2, Triple Trouble, Chaos, and a whole bunch of other things too. The 2 Drift games, Sonic Blast, Sonic Labyrinth. the list could go on forever. And a couple of Tails games too. But yeah, still very interesting system. It does actually have linking capability, although I don't think I've actually ever played a 2-player Game Gear game. But yeah, overall, and despite the fact it's color, I've never really been a fan of the screen. I've always found you had to like look at it at the perfect angle to kind of see it. And it's never really been that comfortable. One of the really neat things about the Game Gear, though, is the Master Gear Converter. And what that is it's this little cool device thing right here. And you put that into the back of your Game Gear, and now you can play Master System games anywhere you go. And I've always thought that was really neat. And I always wish that Nintendo had something like that. I mean, I did later acquire, like a third-party kind of portable NES thing. Although it's not the same. I mean, of course the Master Gear Converter is not really an official Sega add-on. Although it still is really neat, and it's something that was kind of out back then, and didn't come out too recently, like the portable NES did. Although one other interesting, the other handheld that Sega came out with is the Nomad. Now this is really cool. So, I mean, of course you have the Master Gear Converter if you wanted to play your Master System games on your Game Gear. Although the Nomad is a portable Genesis that was officially released by Sega back then, and I think this thing is absolutely awesome. I love the Nomad. It's just really neat. One thing though is that a lot of times you find them without the battery pack, since this thing comes off. And yeah, I mean, if you don't have that, you're not playing it unless it's plugged in, and that just makes it pretty much a normal Genesis then. You can also put an AV cable on the top, and there's another controller port in the bottom, so yeah, the AV cable obviously so you can hook it up to your TV, and the controller port so that a second player can play. So I guess if this would be the first player's controller if it was hooked up to the TV, and then you could obviously have the second player's. But overall, I quite like the Nomad. It's pretty neat. Of course, it eats batteries really fast. But overall, it's a really neat console, and it is cool to be able to take your Genesis games anywhere you want. But yeah, these days, like, I have that portable NES. People have found out how to make, like, anything portable these days. I think there's, like, portable Nintendo 64s out there now. It's crazy. Talk about all very interesting. And, yeah, I think we are going to move on after a quick drink, because I've been talking a lot. That's my dog barking. I wonder if everyone can hear that. Anyway, moving on. Next console we are going to talk about is... Don't believe I've missed anything. I hope not. The next console is the Sega Saturn. The next big console after the Sega Genesis and all 500 of its revisions and different things like the CDX and stuff like that. Can you guys hear that? Well, it's really bugging me. I'm never going to get out of here, though. And my dog, a dog walks by and she'll start barking at it, and she'll just keep barking until you go and tell her to stop. It doesn't matter. It could be like 15 minutes later, and she'll just keep barking until you go and tell her, like, man, you don't need the bark at it anymore. So I'll be right back, and I'm going to go tell her to be quiet. Yeah. There we go. Finally got her to stop. And she's a really nice dog. She just, for some reason, starts barking for absolutely no reason sometimes. I think she wants me to take her for a walk, which I'll do right after this. She never comes downstairs. She's just a really small dog. I mean, she's not really small, but she's not very big. She doesn't come downstairs because the stairs on the way down, they're like wood stairs, but they've been painted, so they're kind of slippery, and she always like slips down them when she comes down. And she even slips up the stairs when she goes up the stairs. So she never comes down here. I mean, upstairs is carpet, so it's not so bad. But yeah, that's why she never comes down here. She used to come down all the time. Although, I mean, I guess it might be a bit of a pain. I mean, if she tried to get in here while I was doing this. I guess I could just close the door. I don't know why I don't. Because, I mean, she doesn't come down anyway. But anyway, while I was gone, I picked up one of those card games. And as you can see, the picture on the front is just a picture of a guy holding the card. I mean, wow. Really, really great picture there. And as you can see, you open it up. And there's your card in like a nice plastic protective thing. Can you hear that? That was not good. I almost crushed something. But yeah, I don't know what she barks at. I mean, there's nothing even there. You tell her to stop barking, and you look out the window, and there's like nothing. I didn't even see a dog that time. But yeah, hopefully that's the end of it. Please. Spent like 5 minutes talking about my dog now, and not enough time talking about the Sega Saturn. Sega's second last major console, and there was a few revisions of this too. I mean, I don't really know why they bothered. But the one you can see on the front here, it kind of has the, I don't know, I always call them like the sunflower seed shaped buttons as you, I'm trying to point and hold the box at the same time. And it's not really working because this is a big, wide, heavy box. The second model's box was actually a bit smaller. Right there and there. Yeah, those buttons on the second model were actually just perfectly circle instead of being that kind of weird shape. And there's also a few differences on other differences on the second model. But overall, the Sega Saturn, definitely a very interesting console. Like I said, again, something I didn't really grow up with. And its main competitors were kind of the PlayStation and Nintendo 64. So, I mean, it kind of got beat out. And I mean, despite the fact that it does have some decent games, I kind of agree that the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 are kind of better. But yeah, it did have some games. The cases resembled those of the Sega CD. So yeah, Sonic R is one of those games. A game that people don't really like. It's interesting. It's an interesting game. I wouldn't say I hate it. I've beat it. I actually have played through and unlocked everything. Although, it's an interesting game, although it's not the best racing game ever. Still not bad, though. But overall, the Sega Saturn, very interesting. The controllers aren't bad. I actually prefer the second style of Genesis controller over this. So, I mean, it just feels kind of, like, strange, the whole, I don't know. I honestly feel much more comfortable holding the nice round controller rather than these, like, weird kind of stumps on the bottom. Although there was a different controller that was released later this one, and it actually has a really nice control stick kind of thing, with your normal D-pad down here, which is pretty much taken right from the other controller. And it's pretty much the same as the Genesis second model controller one. You have your start button and all your buttons. So overall, I actually don't mind this controller. It's kind of neat, despite being like almost a perfect circle with those stumps again down there, which is kind of weird. Yeah, one other thing about the Saturn is that we only got the black version in North America, I believe. I think we only got the black one. Although Japan, the normal color for the one in Japan was white, although they also got a nice gray one. I think they even got a nice clear blue one, which is really cool. Though overall, I think Japan's actually looks a bit nicer. And their controller, too. Yeah, that is true. There was a second model. There was another model of the Saturn controller. I believe there was, black North American ones, too. I don't think I have any on the shelf, actually. There might be some in my Model 2 box. Although, yeah, this controller is a bit more round. I guess maybe other people didn't really like the awkward shape of this one, too. But overall, I like this controller quite a bit more than the one I showed earlier. And one other cool thing about the Saturn is its really neat light gun. Looks just like something you'd find out of an arcade, and this would be like for Virtual Cop and stuff like that. Very neat gun, and yeah, it looks really nice, just like something you'd find in the arcade, like I just said. Alright. One console to go. And I have to lift it up from over there. Last console we're going to talk about today. I'm pretty much out of room. There's like no more room that I could put things that I'd just be able to grab it. So I didn't actually get like a console out to show you. Although a lot of people probably know what the Dreamcast looks like. I only got I got 2 boxes down. And this is the box I ended up deciding to get. And the last console we're going to talk about today is the Sega Dreamcast. Now, the Sega Dreamcast is actually a really, really cool console, and it's too bad that it had the fate that it did. I mean, I guess by that point, the Saturn didn't do too well, so I guess maybe people were kind of losing faith in Sega, and then, of course, there was Sony who entered the market, and a lot of people were hearing great things about them, so a lot of people were buying PlayStations, and, yeah, so, I mean, the Dreamcast... I don't care. I closed the door this time, so I don't even care. So, I mean, the Dreamcast didn't really get the recognition that it deserved at the time. It deserved a lot more, but I mean, I guess Sega was probably just so far in the hole, and PlayStation was now competing with them, and Xbox was soon to follow, and I mean, I guess there just wasn't, Xbox, I think, was still, yeah, Xbox was soon to follow, so I mean, it's too bad what happened to the Dreamcast. This is one of only 2 colors that were released for it. This is the sports set that came with 2 sports games. And the black console and black controller. But yeah, it's too bad what happened to it. Another reason why the Dreamcast failed is because of how easy it was to play burned games for it. What's it called? Yeah, down here. I mean, the Dreamcast had some incredible games, like Evolution, obviously Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, stuff like that. Very good games, although it was super easy to burn your own games for it. I mean, which is kind of too bad. I mean, it didn't have any region... Well, I mean, I think it does have region protection. I don't believe you can play Japanese games on a North American Dreamcast, but for some reason, you can play burned games. I don't know why. So, yeah, I guess a lot of people were burning games and stuff like that. So, they just weren't getting the sales that they needed. And here's another version of the box right here. One of the Japanese ones. I have one that looks pretty much just like this, except it's a white background with an orange swirl, so it's like pretty much the exact opposite. And this is that one that also has all those crazy pictures of the guy on the back, which are always really funny to look at. So yeah, there's that. And then, I always really liked the Dreamcast controller. I always thought the thumbstick was pretty cool. I like the button setup, have the D-pad down here, the start button, and the shoulder buttons I always thought were really neat. Not everyone will agree. And also the VMU, so like the memory card with the little screen on the front that you could put in there. I thought that was really, really cool. But overall, it's too bad what happened to Sega. It was like, for all the reasons I just said. Unfortunately, they left the console market. Although, the good thing is that didn't stop them from making some really great games. I mean, for the first little while, they were just re-releasing a few like of their Dreamcast titles on things like the GameCube. Like, you get like Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 on the GameCube. Although eventually they did start making some new things which were actually pretty good. I mean, Sonic definitely did have that bit of a downward slope. Although he's coming back, and I haven't actually played episode 2 yet. Because I'm actually going to go play it like right after this. But I mean, hopefully that's really good. I liked episode 1, even though not everyone did. Although I thought Sonic Generations was like the best Sonic game in like billions of years. But yeah, these days you can find Sonic on a whole bunch of different crazy consoles and a whole bunch of crazy games. I mean, you go back to like the 90s and then tell someone that, I mean, yeah, let's all use our time machines and go back to the 90s and tell someone that in 10 years, or like 10 or 20 years, Sonic's going to be in the game, or Mario's going to be in the same game as Sonic, and they're going to be at the Olympics. I mean, no one will believe you, ever. You'll just be laughed at and ridiculed, and like every newspaper will be like laughing at you, saying how much of a moron you are, even though you built the time machine and came from the future. So I mean, overall, it is quite interesting what did end up happening, and Sega's still making good games today. Even though they're not making consoles, they even make a whole bunch of TV things like this, and that one I always have behind my head there, which has a whole bunch of Genesis games built into it. This one has 2 of the Game Gear / Master System ports built into it. So yeah, I mean, a whole bunch of different crazy stuff has happened, and it's just really interesting to see what's happened over the last while. I mean, it would be interesting to see what kind of consoles Sega would still be making today, if they hadn't have gone, if they hadn't have left the console market. Because, I mean, the Dreamcast is a really cool console, and they did just finally get it right. It's too bad it was too late. So yeah, yeah. I think that's all I really have to say about all of the Sega stuff. I mean, this video, it's been recording for 36 minutes and 13 seconds, although a lot of that was me going upstairs to stop my dog from barking, because I didn't stop recording while I did that. I'm just going to cut those parts out. Yeah, I believe that's all I have to say about Sega consoles. So yeah, Sonic 4 Episode 2 comes out, well, Europe today, although it should have been out in North America yesterday. Because I'm recording this on the day that it was supposed to come out in North America. I don't know, it's so confusing. Let's just say it's... I don't even know. But yeah, those are all the Sega consoles, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about them, listening to me talk about them, and I believe I talked about everything, because there was a ton of stuff all over the place, and now I have to put all of it back on the shelves. And that's not going to be fun, because it only fits in like a really specific way. I need to get more organized. But anyway, I think that's all I'm going to talk about for today. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something new about Sega consoles. And I hope I didn't get anything really wrong. Yell at me below if I did. And yeah, hope you'll join me tomorrow for another Sonic game. So thanks, and see you then.